Between Gran Turismo 7, Project Cars 3 and the next inevitable Forza title, the racing genre is certainly becoming a little overcrowded, with photorealistic sims all vying to offer the definitive realistic racing experience. However, the folks at Sumo Digital and Lucky Mountain Games seek to offer a slightly different racing experience with Hotshot Racing, a nostalgic throwback to the beloved arcade racers of the 90s, due to release later this summer. Everything about Hotshot Racing, from its low-poly aesthetic, over-the-top announcer and blisteringly fast-paced gameplay, made me forget that I was just sitting at my desk, and instead immersed me in the experience of being at the sticks of an actual arcade cabinet, coins in hand. But can a nostalgic throwback experience justify itself as a standalone racer in 2020? During my hour-long session with the Hotshot team, the developers made no secret that their inspirations, Hard Driving, Virtua Racing and Daytona USA, were titles that they held close to their hearts. And the DNA of all three of those is abundantly evident as soon as players jump into their first race. It makes no apologies for not being an ultra-realistic sim, embracing the breakneck speed and often comically disaster-prone nature of arcade racers in its stride. Like its inspirations, the developers intended gameplay to be purposefully simple, and it's entirely built around its drift system, where successful drifts build up a boost meter, allowing the player to soar in front of their opponents. Base statistics can vary slightly depending on which car the player chooses, but it's pretty much all there is to it. Racers only need to navigate the boost and drift buttons, and the rest is up to the player's unique strategy and technique. This means the game is super accessible, perhaps even more so than Mario Kart, as players only need to control the basic movement of their car and work just 2 buttons. Yet being accessible doesn't necessarily mean forgiving. Just one poorly executed drift can cost the entire race, often leaving little opportunity to catch up. Thankfully, the gameplay takes an easy to learn, hard to master approach, and players will have to refine their drifting ability over the course of several races to confidently navigate the 16 different tracks. Though it would be easy to dismiss the 90s arcade aesthetic in comparison to its high detailed counterparts, what Hotshot lacks in polygons and textures, it makes up for in colour and vibrancy. Every course is a visual feast of pastel colours that, though simple, are simply a joy to absorb. I also fell particularly in love with the game's sound design, which only goes hand in hand with its retro visuals. The presence of an overly enthusiastic announcer who proudly screamed out any of my menu choices with intense excitement brought me straight back to the arcade cabinet. As well as the traditional Grand Prix, time trial and arcade modes, there were 2 additional party game types to choose from in the build that I played. Drive or Explode, a mode inspired by the movie Speed, in which players must consistently stay above 90 miles an hour or risk spontaneous combustion. And Cops and Robbers, in which racers are assigned opposite sides of the law in a high-speed chase that's focused on a combative playstyle of bashing up other cars until they blow up. The thing is, these modes were just so much more fun than the traditional racing modes. I was laughing and cursing at the other players as we bashed our cars together and sent each other flying in a manner that felt so appropriate for a racer trying to distance itself from traditional racing sims. It's a real shame that there are only 2 of these party modes available, and I can't help but feel that Sumo Digital are missing a trick on not making these party games the focus of Hotshot Racing, and I would have loved to have seen several other experimental modes. Thankfully, the modes that are available still offer a great, if short-lived, party experience, with support for 4-player co-op and even 8 players online play available on all platforms. LAN play is even supported for Switch. The nostalgic sensibilities and aesthetic of Hotshot Racing is an absolute delight, and achieves its goal of reviving the arcade cabinet games of the 90s. Its simple, accessible gameplay could make it the perfect party game for anyone to pick up and play, although I really think it could benefit from just a few more modes to truly cement itself as one. With a few more multiplayer components, Hotshot could confidently position itself as a competent substitute for the likes of even Mario Kart. Until then, it's a welcome revival of an era of games that have been sorely missed, and a simple but solid arcade racer that's accessible for anyone.